What's going on, everyone? My name is Raymond Roots. I am the other half of the blueprint, and today I'm going to show you how I recreated this iconic Miles Morales Spider-Man shot.
The blueprint.
So a few days ago, I rewatched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and at the point where Miles Morales realizes his powers, there's an amazing sequence of shots that kind of gives you goosebumps, but there's one shot in particular that kind of blew my mind, and from a storytelling perspective, it says so much. It's like the young Spider-Man has matured enough to take on big, scary New York City. The city is kind of his heritage, and him realizing that is, in my opinion, perfectly illustrated. So I tried to recreate it. Real quick, before we move on, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so we can beat the algorithm's butt. And also, if you want key knowledge from industry insiders who are working with Marvel, Disney, Panasonic, Liverpool, and other brands, make sure to listen to our podcast. We drop an episode every single Monday. The links will be in the description below, and it's completely free. Educational and free. All right, so let's get started. I did this in 4 steps, and step number 1 is prep. You gotta prep beforehand. This is an unnatural shot. It's an awkward shot. It's weird to do these types of shoots. So you gotta prep beforehand, and you do that to maximize the chances of your success. First thing I tried to do was to look for a skyline of New York City, and I wanted it to be New York City because I want it to be in the same environment that Miles Morales is in. So if you want super high quality stock photos that are royalty free and completely free of use, go to unsplash.com, and it's not an ad. Don't even think we're big enough to get ads and sponsors. It's not an ad, it's not a sponsorship, it's just a website that I really enjoy using, and I do use it a lot for the stuff that I do. So I went on to unsplash.com and went on there and spent about an hour to an hour and a half looking for the perfect shot of New York City. The next thing you kind of want to do in your prep is study the pose. The pose is really awkward. There's no way to replicate that without getting hurt. Miles Morales is jumping down from building, a really tall building, and his body's kind of adapting to the wind hitting him at that speed. There's no way I'm gonna do that without getting hurt, so I gotta do it the other way around. I gotta jump, and that becomes a lot harder to recreate that pose when you jump. So what I did was I grabbed a screenshot of that pose and put it on my phone, so when I went out to actually take the photos with my friend, I had a reference point. So every time he'd take a picture, I'll review it and compare it to the Miles Morales photo, and also compare it to the background image that I selected. So keep the pose in mind, it's important. So if you've watched the movie, you know that Miles Morales is basically wearing some iconic Jordan 1 Chicagos, and kind of makes the shot and the whole image of Miles Morales just a little extra cool. But if you go to StockX or Flight Club or any other website that kind of sells these shoes, these limited edition shoes, you'll find that the prices are so high that you gotta wonder if it's worth it. In my opinion, it's not. So if you have the shoe, it makes sense to use it. If you don't, going out to get that is kind of pointless, expensive, unless you really want the shoe. So in my case, I'm a retired and currently rehabilitating sneakerhead. I'm still learning life without queuing up for shoes, but I have the shoe at home, so I broke it out and decided to use it for the shoot as well, just to add that little extra. For the outfit, I gotta find something that matches the structure of the outfit without being an exact copy. I don't have a red hoodie, I don't have a Spider-Man mask, so it's gonna be something that matches the structure. So I went with a black bomber jacket and a beige hoodie. There are certain limitations with this concept, and I'm gonna keep saying it throughout this video. Miles is jumping downwards, and he's being lit in a well-lit city, which is New York. If you've ever been to Times Square at night, you know how lit it is there. And I don't mean lit as in lit, I mean lit as in literally lit. The lighting is incredible there. So Miles Morales is being lit from a well-lit city, jumping downwards, and the fact that it's a well-lit city actually makes it more realistic to actually get that type of shot from a technical perspective, but I'll kind of get into that later on in the video. What you want to do is have the right settings that give you the best opportunity to get a clean and sharp image. So what are those settings? Shutter speed. To get this falling down effect, we're gonna have to do it the opposite way, and we're gonna have to jump like I said before. Jumping is an explosive movement where you go from point A to point B, from the ground and up. And in order to get a clean, sharp image, we need a high shutter speed so we don't get any motion blur. If your motion blur is too low, you're gonna get a blurry image. And here's an example of exactly that. You want as little motion blur as possible, and if you want to add that in your edit, you can do that. But the basis has to be that your picture that you're taking in camera is as clean, as sharp as possible. So crank up your shutter speed. Now, because you turned up your shutter speed, your image is going to get darker. That's just the way cameras work. So you want to counterbalance that by opening up your aperture. We shot this with an 85mm at f2. You can experiment, whatever works with the gear that you have. Now remember, the wider your aperture is open, the less sharp your image is going to be. But in this case, where I'm the subject and I have to resize myself to kind of smaller than the image itself, it's not going to make a big difference because it's still going to come out clean, but not as sharp as if I was shooting, for example, at f4. Autofocus. If you can use autofocus, use it. Now you don't absolutely need it, but it's gonna make your life so much easier. I don't have any more autofocus lenses left, and we can get into why I don't have any more of that in another video. But let me just tell you from firsthand experience, it's gonna get so much harder to complete this project if you don't have autofocus. So if you have it, use it. Step 3, the edit. Now this is probably the hardest but most rewarding part of the whole project. This is basically where your entire vision comes to life. First thing I did was kind of review all the photos that I had, and I took 3 of them, put them into Photoshop to see which angle was the best. And I kind of matched those pictures up with the background image to see which one fits the best. You don't want a picture where the angle is off because that's not going to sell the effect. So I opened up Photoshop and started the long, tedious process of cutting myself out of the original image using the pen tool. And the pen tool can take forever to use. It took me 45 minutes just to cut myself out. Trust me, trust me, trust me. If you take your time, it's so much worth it. Next thing I do is I rotate my background image so it matches the one in the Miles Morales shot. And then you create an embarrassing amount of Photoshop layers to try to blend myself in with the background picture. This is everything from adjusting the white balance to the exposure and matching the lighting on myself to the lighting pattern of the background image in the city. If you want to see a step-by-step guide on how to recreate this image in Photoshop, leave a comment down below and we'll get to it. But for the sake of keeping this video short, I'm just going to give you some tips to consider when you do these types of edits. White balance. Does your color temperature match that of the background? Exposure. Are you exposed the same way as the background? Lighting angle. The direction of light typically comes from one point in the background image and one point in your own image. Do those two align, or are they opposite of each other? If they're opposite of each other, it's not going to look realistic. So just keep in mind, you want to consider realism when you do these types of composites. I even adjusted the angle of my foot because I didn't like the way it looked. So what I did was I just traced around my foot, copied it, deleted it, and then moved it around. Anyway, step number 3, call MIVisuals and cry. This edit was so frustrating for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 was I'm rusty. I haven't done a Photoshop composite for a while. And to be honest, I actually haven't done anything in Photoshop for over a year, I think. So it's safe to say I'm kind of rusty. The last picture I did in Photoshop was this. And I dropped this on January 1st, 2020, and I edited that picture a few days before that. I had completely forgotten the importance of a good workflow, so it quickly became a long, confusing list of layers that I kind of had to try and navigate through. So don't do that. Get a good workflow. That's the way you want to start your projects, whether that's editing photos or videos. Reason number 2 is emotional investment. I love this concept from the Spider-Man movie, and the idea kind of kept me up some nights because it really got me excited about doing editing again. Like I said before, I hadn't done it in about a year, so it kind of got me excited about doing photo edits again. So to spend hours on it and not be happy with it, it's like a gut punch that I kind of didn't expect. So I call Muhammad Imam, aka MIVisuals, the other half of the blueprint. You've seen him here on the channel before. And after a quick session of roasting my Photoshop organizational skills, he helped me in the right direction. Obviously, you can't call MIVisuals because that number is VIP, obviously. But the point here is to ask for help before you give up. In our podcast episode with Jody Wozencroft-Ray, who is an accredited CBT psychotherapist, we talked about self-doubt and how that inner critic serves the purpose of protecting us from harm. And the more we feed that inner critic with inaction in terms of what we want to do, in my case, it's this photo edit that I want to do, the more power it'll have over us. So it was really important to me that I actually got this piece done. I was fortunate enough to ask MIVisuals for help who knows Photoshop, but it doesn't have to be someone who's savvy in the softwares that you use. In my case, I could have asked anybody, does this look realistic? And if they say no, you ask what doesn't look realistic about it, and then I know how to translate that into Photoshop language. Anyways, if you want to check that podcast episode out, it's on self-doubt with an accredited CBT psychotherapist. Links will be down below in the description. That brings us to step number 4, which is the final touches. The last thing I did was to add my personal final touches. The things that differentiate this concept from the original piece and makes it my own. The original shot is very neon-y, kind of like this background right here. And the colors are bright and comic book-like. The whole show is kind of comic book-like, which is what I really like about it. And in some aspects, it's even like cyberpunk-ish with the color scheme. But I wanted to go in a different direction. I wanted it to feel a little more raw and gritty because that's how New York City is usually described as. So I added some film grain on the entire picture to create that effect, and boom, the edit was finally done after a whole day. All there's left at this point is just to crop it to the size that I wanted. And honestly, I spent so much time on it that I created 3 different sizes and then posted on Instagram. So anyways, guys, that's how I recreated this iconic Miles Morales Spider-Man shot and kind of added my own touches to it to make it my own. If you like this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to our channel so we can beat the algorithm's butt. We're going to be dropping videos every single Friday and podcast episodes every single Monday on your favorite podcast platform. We're just going to wrap this up. Stay creative, stay productive, stay safe. Links will be down below, and until next time, peace.